inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration. I think it was
Mark Zuckerberg has been setting the left wing on fire, and it definitely doesn't change here. As he went on the Joe Rogan Experience, and Joe Rogan asked him the hard questions, the questions that we all wanted to know, and Zuckerberg exposed everything. Things are getting really wild when it comes to the current state of social media, when it comes to the whole political and cultural landscape. It's getting wild out there, and Mark Zuckerberg is kind of throwing gasoline on that fire by exposing many different things. Let's get into this clip here where Joe Rogan forces Mark Zuckerberg to admit the truth about everything.
Right. It's, I think part of my reflection looking back on this is I kind of think in 2016 in the aftermath, I gave too much deference to a lot of folks in the media who were basically saying, okay, there's no way that this guy could have gotten elected except for misinformation. People can't actually believe this stuff, right? It has to be that there's this kind of like massive misinformation out there. Some of it started with the Russia collusion stuff, but it kind of morphed into different things over time.
Well, he was so ideologically polarizing, right? Like people didn't want to believe that anybody looked at him and said, this should be our president. Yeah, so I took this and just kind of assumed that everyone was acting in good faith. And I said, okay, well, there are concerns about misinformation. We should, just like when people raised other concerns in the past and we try to deal with them, okay, yeah, people if you ask people, no one says that they want misinformation. So maybe there's something that we should do to basically try to address this. But I was really worried from the beginning about basically becoming this sort of decider of what is true in the world, right? That's like kind of a crazy position to be in for billions of people using your service. And so we tried to put in place a system that would deal with it. And early on tried to basically make it so that it was really limited. We're like, all right, we're just going to have this system where there's these third-party fact checkers and they can check the worst of the worst stuff, right? So things that are very clear hoaxes, that there's like, it's not like we're not parsing speech about whether something is slightly true or slightly false, like Earth is flat, things like that, right?
Yeah, third-party fact checkers. Where are the third-party fact checkers coming from? Do these third-party fact checkers happen to be coming from the Biden administration or happen to be coming from the Democrat establishment? Because where else would they be coming from? I'm pretty sure he does at some point, if he didn't already just say it, he does at some point, Zuckerberg does admit to Joe Rogan that these fact checkers, third-party fact checkers, did come from the Biden administration and came from the Democratic establishment. So it's not really, technically, I guess it is third party, but it's not, they're not unbiased. They're very obviously placed there to only censor one side of the aisle. Now, what I'm curious to see from you guys in the comments is, why do you think Mark Zuckerberg is having this turn? Why all of a sudden is he going on Joe Rogan's podcast? Why is Zuckerberg making those videos exposing the censorship that he carried out on his platforms? Why is he doing that now? Do you think he's having a sudden change of heart? Because I think it's one of two things. Either Zuckerberg has been thinking this way for a while, feeling guilty about it, and now Trump has won and he feels like he's kind of freed. He's able to say stuff like this now because Trump won. Or number two, which is much more likely in my opinion, he's a businessman. I think he's worth $100 billion or something like that. He's the youngest ever to be worth that much money. He's a businessman, and a good one. Regardless of what you think about him, he's a good businessman for sure. And he sees the direction that the culture is going. He sees the direction that the power is shifting. And Zuckerberg wants to get ahead of that curve a bit, or at least not get left behind. Donald Trump winning the popular vote is not a small feat. It's not a small thing. It's a huge signal. And I think Zuckerberg and people like him are picking up on it. And that's why he's going on the Joe Rogan Experience and doing these things. I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say about that, though.
So that was sort of the original intent. We put in place the system and it just sort of veered from there. I think to some degree, it's because some of the people whose job is to do fact checking, a lot of their industry is focused on political fact checking. So they just kind of veered in that direction. And we kept on trying to basically get it to be what we had originally intended, which is just, it's not, the point isn't to like judge people's opinions. It's to provide this layer to kind of help fact check some of the stuff that seems the most extreme. But it just, it was just never accepted by people broadly. I think people just felt like the fact checkers were too biased. Not necessarily even so much in what they ruled, although sometimes I think people would disagree with that. A lot of the time, it was just what types of things they chose to even go and fact check in the first place. So, I kind of think, like, after having gone through that whole exercise, it I don't know, it's something out of, like, 1984, one of these books where it's just like it really is a slippery slope, and it just got to a point where it's just, okay, this is destroying so much trust, especially in the United States, to have this program. And I guess it was probably about a few years that I really...
If you enjoy content like this, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Started coming to the conclusion that we were going to need to change something about that. COVID was the other big one, where that was also very tricky because, at the beginning, it was, it's like a legitimate public health crisis, in the beginning. And it's, even people who are like the most ardent First Amendment, defenders, the Supreme Court has this clear precedent that's like, all right, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. There are times when, if there's an emergency, your ability to speak can temporarily be curtailed in order to get an emergency under control. So I was sympathetic to that at the beginning of COVID. It seemed like, okay, you have this virus. It seems like it's killing a lot of people. I don't know, like, we didn't know at the time how dangerous it was going to be. So at the beginning, it kind of seemed like, okay, we should give a little bit of deference to the government and the health authorities on how we should play this. But when it went from, 2 weeks to flatten the curve to, and like in the beginning, it was like, okay, there aren't enough masks. Masks aren't that important. To then it's like, oh no, you have to wear a mask. And,
Yeah, I don't know how much I buy of this. I'm gonna be honest with you. Now, in the beginning, I do think, I don't know, you guys, I think a lot of people, they don't actually put themselves in the person's shoes. Like, you don't put yourself in Zuckerberg's shoes. He's running a multi-billion-dollar company that is being pressured by the United States government to do certain things. The United States government is not just the United States government, by the way. There's people on top of them that actually run stuff that could 100% get things to happen, okay? If you know what I'm saying. Like, if Zuckerberg refused, you don't think he'd be targeted a bit? So you got to really put yourself in those shoes. And also, whenever that stuff, like whenever COVID first hit and the lockdown started, I was a little scared. Like, I remember I was going into work and it was like there was cases popping up in my state. And I was like texting it was my dad. He was my boss at the time. I was like, when are we going to like stop going into the office? I was getting a little bit nervous. I was like, I don't want to catch this stuff. There's people dying from this and they're saying how horrible it is. It worked on me for a while. But like Zuckerberg is saying here to Joe Rogan, after the mask didn't work and then they did work and then, the jabs, they were supposed to stop the spread. And then all of a sudden they actually didn't stop transmission, but everybody has to get it so that transmission doesn't happen. None of it added up. None of it made sense. And then also the icing on top of everything, the most ridiculous and blatantly obvious part is the video that you can see of all these Democrats saying, I would never get the Trump jab. I would never get the Trump jab. I would never get the Trump jab. And then they get in office and you're forced to get it. They're all posting videos of them getting the Trump jab. They're all telling you that you need to get it or else you can't go into certain restaurants. You can't get on airplanes. That's the icing on top of all of it. And the censorship continued at that point. So like he's saying that in the beginning, it was reasonable. I would agree. It was somewhat reasonable in the beginning because nobody knew what the hell was going on. So you didn't want people on the platform saying, hey, you can just go outside. You can go spread this stuff. It's really not that bad because we didn't know. Like, I don't care what you say. We didn't know how bad it was going to be. But then we did know, and the censorship continued past that point. So, like I said, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for the beginning. I'll give him that. But I don't buy the part where he's like, we just did it because we didn't know. Because you did know after a while. And he basically just admitted that he did know after a while.
Like everything was shifting around. It just became very difficult to kind of follow. And this really hit the most extreme, I'd say, during the Biden administration when they were trying to roll out the vaccine program. And I'm generally like pretty pro rolling out vaccines. I think on balance, the vaccines are more positive than negative. But I think that while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who is basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were honestly were true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. Like, we're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration. I think it was I wasn't involved in those conversations directly, but I think it was.
How difficult is that to not be involved in those conversations directly? Fitness isn't just about what you do in the gym. It's all
what a time for an ad, man. Beautiful placement there, Joe. Great job.
Like what's a Facebook? How many people use it on a daily basis? Forget about how many overall. Like how many people use it regularly?
It's 3.2 billion people use one of our services every day. It's wild.
More than a third of the planet. That's so crazy.
Yeah, and it's
almost half of Earth.
Well, on a monthly basis, it is probably half. Of it. But
I want to say that though there's a lot of like hypercritical people that are conspiracy theorists and think that everybody is a part of some cabal to control them. I want you to understand that whether it's YouTube or all these, whatever place that you think is doing something that's awful, it's good that you speak because this is how things get changed and this is how people find out that people are upset about content moderation.
And also, Joe Rogan is saying there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that think there's a cabal trying to control the world. Bro, that's literally what Zuckerberg just said. That's literally what he just said. Do you think that a side that is on the correct side, that is on the side of truth, would be going to these heads of these social media platforms and trying to censor the other side? Or do you think that the side that's probably, on the right side of history, on the right side of the truth, is the side that's kind of sitting back and saying, hey, let's just let the marketplace of ideas play out. Let's let everything out there and see what happens. I think it's probably the side that wants everything out there, not the side that wants to censor the other side and is basically threatening these social media platforms to take certain stuff down that makes them look bad because they know they've gone too far in the lie, basically. They got caught in a lie and they just want to keep the lie going by censoring people who are calling out the fact that they blatantly lied to the population. Let me know in the comments, though, what you guys think about Joe Rogan bringing on Zuckerberg and asking him the tough questions and Zuckerberg being pretty open to answer and expose the Biden administration. Now, I think this would have been really cool and really hardcore of Zuckerberg if he did this 2 years ago in the height of the Biden administration. This would be cool. But he didn't. He waited until Trump won, and they don't have power anymore. And they don't have power in the government in terms of the president, and they also don't have power in the culture anymore. And he waited until that happened. And that's why I lose like a bit of respect for it. But I guess I appreciate it. But at the same time, like when the pendulum swings back in the other direction, is he just going to go right back to capitulating to that side? Probably so. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about Mark Zuckerberg going on the Joe Rogan Experience and exposing the entirety of the woke left and exposing the censorship that is on the woke left.